In 1554, London didn't just stink of smoke and sweat and coal. It carried another scent, a heavier one, the smell of something invisible turning inside out. If you'd stood in the streets before dawn, when the fog clung low and the city hadn't yet fully woken, you might have thought the air was simply bad, that the rot under your tongue was just the price of living near the Thames. But beneath the smoke, beneath the piss and spilled ale and rotten meat, there was a quieter odor, a sour metallic note that belonged not to the city, but to a single woman at its center. A queen whose body had become a secret London didn't know it was keeping. The city itself was a wound barely scabbed over. Timber houses leaned toward each other across alleys so narrow a grown man could touch both walls at once. Mud, ash, and animal filth turned the streets into a permanent sludge that clung to boots and hems and bare, numb feet. The river did what it always did, pretending to clean even as it swallowed everything people were too ashamed, too poor, or too frightened to keep. Butchered scraps, unwanted infants, dead dogs, old blood. People drank from that same water, cooked with it, washed away sores and bruises in it, convincing themselves that boiling and prayer could turn a grave into a blessing. Rats skittered through this world like silent messengers. They crawled across rafters and bedrolls, gnawed through sacks of grain, darted over the bodies of the poor sleeping in doorways. Their tiny claws traced paths over the cheeks of starving children who no longer woke when something moved over them. If death had a foot soldier, it was a rat with a slick back and red pinprick eyes, vanishing into cracks before a hand could strike it. Above that crawling, stinking ground, the bells never stopped. They rang from church towers, reminding London that God was watching. They rang for mass, for fasting, for plague, for executions. Their iron voices braided with the sounds everyone pretended not to hear, distant cries from the stake, a shriek behind a locked door, someone begging on their knees. After a while, the city learned to file all of that under normal. Pain became as familiar as the fog that slid off the river. And over this uneasy kingdom ruled Mary Tudor. Her name shivered along hallways like a draft. Some called her pious, some called her merciless, but almost no one spoke of her without lowering their voice. It wasn't because she demanded whispers, it was because England had been taught to be afraid. Afraid of wrong beliefs, wrong words, wrong prayers, the wrong side of a fire. Her reign was a cloud that didn't pass, only thickened, heavy with smoke from bodies turned into warnings. In the squares, flames didn't just consume flesh. They devoured courage. Every burning said the same thing in a language everyone understood. Certain thoughts could kill you. Certain doubts could strip you naked, bind your hands, and turn your last breath into entertainment. Ash speckled the city, carried by wind onto window ledges, roofs, river water, the hair of passing children. People brushed it away without asking whose ashes they were smearing into the dirt. Merchants kept their eyes on their coins, their ledgers, their wares. If a hollow-eyed child watched them eat, that was none of their concern. If a woman collapsed in the street, there would be time to look after business first. Nobles closed shutters, stuffed flowers into their rooms, drenched themselves in scent until the world smelled like roses over rot, candles over mold, sanctity over fear. Everyone participated in a collective performance. London was functioning, London was devout, London was fine. But under stone floors and painted ceilings, down stairwells the daylight never found, something was happening that had nothing to do with hunger or sermons. It had everything to do with bodies. With what they hid, with what they could be forced to reveal. Deep below the palace, in chambers that had once been storage rooms or forgotten foundations, men called physicians and healers hovered over benches of wood and slabs of stone. Their hands were slick with things no prayer could wash away. To them, flesh was not sacred, it was material. It could be opened, rearranged, observed. They sliced, stitched, probed, pressing their fingers into organs still warm, peering at colors and textures with the same fascination a goldsmith gave to metal. The dead did not always stay where they were laid. Fresh graves were not always proof of rest. In the dead of night, iron tools bit into newly turned earth. Stolen bodies were hauled out by the wrists, heads lolling, mouths open to the sky as if mid-protest. These stolen dead were traded in whispers to men who paid generously for skin that had not yet gone slack, eyes that had not yet clouded fully. Those bodies made the same journey through hidden corridors, dragged down narrow stone steps, hauled onto cold slabs. Their limbs were arranged, their chests opened, their insides mapped and questioned by men who muttered, not prayers, but calculations. Symbols no priest had blessed were scrawled in the margins of their notes. Here, death was not an ending but raw material. Sometimes the air in the upper corridors changed. It carried up a smell that didn't belong to kitchens or laundry or latrines. A thick metal tang edged with sweetness, like meat just beginning to turn or blood left too long in a bowl. Guards passing certain stretches of hallway shortened their strides, as if unconsciously hurrying, eyes averted from doors they had never been ordered to guard but never dared to open. Servants noticed, because servants always notice. They carried linens and bowls and ink and bread everywhere, weaving through the palace like blood through veins. They heard things. A dull thud where no one was supposed to be. A slow scraping as though something heavy but not quite dead was being pulled along stone. A muffled sound that might have been a voice or might have been a breath or might have been their imagination. Those who spoke too clearly about what they thought they'd heard found themselves sent to other buildings, other duties, other houses entirely. Some simply stopped appearing in their usual places, replaced by new faces who knew nothing of the sounds below. One young maid went down with a basket of cloth and did not come back. Her absence was explained with brisk lies. She'd taken ill, she'd been dismissed, she'd gone to family. Near the stairwell, hours later, someone noticed a rust-brown smear on the stone. No one asked how it had gotten there. Questions were as dangerous as heresy. Animals felt the wrongness with a sensitivity humans willingly dulled. Dogs tugged at their leashes, refusing to pass certain doors. Their fur bristled, their teeth bared at empty corners. Horses balked at some gates, whites of their eyes showing, hooves scraping and skidding as they resisted the bit. Birds circled away from one particular section of the palace roof, as though something perched there that they refused to share the sky with. Rumors moved faster than plagues. In the markets, where fish guts and bread crusts and gossip all changed hands, people swapped fragments of a story. Someone had seen a woman through a tiny, high window, just for a second. Her shape was wrong, they said. Swollen in uneven ways, like something inside her body didn't understand how to grow like a human thing. Her face was twisted, not in a way people recognized from pain or rage, but in some new configuration that made the stomach turn. Her breath, they said, steamed on the glass even in mild weather, and the smell that seeped from around the cracks made men gag and pull back with watering eyes. No one knew who she had been before. Some insisted she must once have been beautiful, because cruelty liked to destroy beauty. Others swore she was never human at all, that she was something summoned, not born. Everyone agreed on one thing: whatever was inside her now did not belong in the world as they understood it. Those foolish or stubborn enough to go looking for the building where she was kept seldom went twice. They came back changed. Their faces looked as if some internal structure had been knocked slightly out of place. Their hands shook when they thought no one was watching. When they tried to tell others what they'd seen, the words tangled and stuck in their throats. Their descriptions came out in fragments: skin like paper soaked in red wine, veins like ink spilled under glass, a stomach that rose and fell as if something inside was breathing on its own schedule. In the middle of this stood a man whose name the records never quite held onto. He moved between the living queen and the dying unknown with the same cold curiosity. To him, sickness was not an enemy to be pitied, it was a doorway. Decay was not a failure. It was a process that might be harnessed, redirected, forced to reveal secrets. Where others saw a body rotting, he saw matter transforming, and in transformation he smelled opportunity. He told himself quietly that rot could be controlled, that if he understood how flesh broke down, he could decide how it broke, and maybe someday how it rebuilt. Each body that failed under his hands was an error in an experiment, not a tragedy. Each death was another data point. He went deeper into his work, down corridors of his own mind where sympathy had no place. The faces on his tables turned from people into problems. Bread was sold, coins exchanged, children begged. Nobles rode by in polished carriages, wheels splashing through the same filth as the poor but lifted high above it. People argued about prices and prayers, about the queen's policies, about the weather. Occasionally someone shivered for no reason they could name. They told themselves it was the wind. Perhaps some of those moving through their days suspected there was more beneath their feet than foundations and rats. Perhaps some heard the odd echo through a drain or a thin patch of wall and chose not to listen. It was easier, safer, to pretend that whatever happened behind thick stone and locked doors had nothing to do with them. London's rot wasn't only in its gutters. It was buried in its decisions, its silences, its willingness to trade discomfort for ignorance. The woman hidden beneath those floors no longer owned the sounds people had once used to identify her. Her name had been taken off lips, taken off lists, taken off prayers. Down there, she existed as a specimen, a subject, a problem to be watched. Her identity had been peeled away like skin. There were no chains on her wrists or iron around her ankles, but she could not leave. Her prison was built of pain and exhaustion, of a body that would not obey her. Her stomach, once unremarkable and flat, now pushed outward in a grotesque curve, not even evenly, but bulging at strange angles. The skin over it had stretched to a reddish sheen, the color of friction burns, veins tracing dark, swollen paths beneath. In the flicker of lamplight, that swollen mass pulsed, as though another heart had taken residence where it had no right to beat. Above her, in chambers lined with velvet instead of stone, another woman lay awake, feeling something disturbingly similar, only this one had a crown. Picture this instead: Whitehall Palace, its inner rooms muffled and dim, braziers smoking, tapestries heavy with dust and incense. Behind one set of carved doors, the air is thick enough to chew. It smells of perfume and sweat and the coppery hint of old blood. Ladies in waiting stand in tight clusters, their whispers fraying into silence when the Queen draws a sharp breath. Mary Tudor, Queen of England, clutches her abdomen as another wave of pain tightens around her like an iron band. For a heartbeat, the palace holds itself perfectly still, waiting for the sound every kingdom longs to hear, the cry of an heir. But no baby cries, no tiny limbs kick against the midwife's hands. No cords are cut, no prayers of thanks shouted. There's only Mary's harsh breathing, the rustle of skirts as someone moves closer with a damp cloth, the low murmur of physicians who are supposed to know what to do and very clearly don't. Once, the swelling of her stomach was celebrated as a miracle. She had been a girl whose world was smashed apart when her parents' marriage was torn in half for the sake of a son who never came. As queen, she had believed this late swelling was God's apology, God's correction, God's hand moving in her favor at last. Broadsheets spoke of a future prince who would secure the Catholic future of England. But beneath Mary's palms, her belly did not behave like the cradle everyone imagined. It was too hard in places, too still in others. The royal midwives, trained to read bodies the way courtiers read expressions, pressed their hands to her skin and felt nothing that reassured them. No rhythmic beat of a smaller heart. It stabbed from deep inside, radiating into her back and down her thighs until standing became a small act of torture. Her legs swelled. Her skin took on a faint yellow tinge that no amount of powder could entirely hide. At night she woke with her shift clinging damply to her, the mattress beneath her damp with sweat, her breath catching on the edge of some invisible cliff. Her ladies documented it all because of this, what palace women did, they watched and remembered and wrote. Swelling in the limbs. A hardened knot low in the abdomen. Nausea that did not follow the predictable rhythm of pregnancy, but came in sour waves that left her lightheaded. A smell beginning to cling to her rooms, something sharp and metallic beneath the clouds of incense and rosewater, something they did their best to drown in burned herbs carried from corner to corner. Priests said it was a test, a refining fire, a holy burden placed on a holy queen. They urged her to bear it with patience and faith. History, looking back from centuries away, would call it something different. Disease, perhaps a tumor growing in the dark hollow of her body, perhaps a storm of wrong signals turning her womb into a cruel mimic of new life. A body tricked by its own failing organs into believing it was fertile when it was, in truth, being quietly consumed. Mary, who had watched her mother waste herself trying to give Henry VIII a son, who had seen the way a royal woman's worth could be measured in stillborns and miscarriages, knew that her body had never truly belonged to her. It belonged to the dynasty, to the church, to the narratives men needed to write. Now, as she lay in her guarded chamber, pulse fluttering at her throat, she realized something worse. Her body didn't even belong to itself anymore. The palace corridors buzzed with talk they tried to keep from her. Whispers of a due date slipping past with no labor. Murmurs about midwives dismissed in the night, physicians arguing behind closed doors, papers being drawn up and quietly tucked away in case of a change in plans. Her belly remained swollen, her pain grew sharper, but no life stirred within. The swelling was wrong. That much everyone could agree on. When the time that should have brought birth came and went, the city waited for some official announcement, joyful, tragic, anything. Inside the palace, they watched the swelling begin to recede, not with the exhausted rush of birth, but with the slow, solemn collapse of a body that could no longer maintain a lie, even to itself. The child was lost, they said publicly, their words wrapped in the familiar language of sorrow and mystery. But those who had pressed their hands to her abdomen knew the truth. There had never been a child there at all. Mary emerged from her confinement changed. She was thinner, as if something had been scooped out of her. Her hair clung lank to her temples. Her eyes, once sharp with conviction, now wore shadows like bruises. Her skin blotched and pale, her steps uncertain. Courtiers bowed as deeply as ever, but from behind lowered lashes, they studied her with a new kind of fear. The queen looked years older, as though something inside her had been quietly rotting all along and had finally begun to show through the surface. Yet, even as the swelling faded, the disease did not. It lingered, reshaped, deepened. Her abdomen never truly returned to its former state. Instead, in the months that followed, it began to grow again, not with the soft curve of hope, but with the slow, cruel insistence of something that refused to be dismissed. This time, no one dared call it pregnancy. The word hung in the air, unspoken, as her body stiffened under the weight of fluid and unseen masses. Her breath grew shallow again. Rising from a chair became an ordeal. Bending sent knives of pain through her pelvis and spine. Some days, she could stand only by bracing herself against the table until the wave of dizziness passed. Other days she barely left her bed, her hands resting on the swollen knot she no longer dared interpret as anything but an enemy. Whispers multiplied, tumor, dropsy, obstruction, decay, the physicians themselves, versed in the limited vocabulary of their age, described water in the belly, a hardness in the inward parts, a dampness of the womb, words that meant very little and everything at once.